everyone. It's my distinct honor to welcome LaToya Wilson, the Managing Director of the Morgan Stanley Inclusive Venture Lab for Underrepresented Founders, to our show today. LaToya, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up being involved in supporting underrepresented founders at Morgan Stanley?
Absolutely. So thank you so much to you and the OneValley team for having me. I'm excited, one, to be partners with you and OneValley, but also to be on the show. So I've actually been at Morgan Stanley now for about 7 years, exclusively on this team. I started my career at GE Capital. I went through their financial management program and then did some private equity leverage lending. So my background is traditionally in finance. Right before the '08 crisis, I actually wanted to take a pivot and do some impact investing. So I left, did some work in the nonprofit sector, but still kind of investing in underrepresented communities. And that took me to an opportunity at Morgan Stanley back in 2017 when this group, which was formerly known as the Multicultural Client Strategy Group, was started by Carla Harris at the time. And the idea was that the market was missing an opportunity when thinking about investing in women and other underrepresented founders, so founders of color. So we really started with a couple of key kind of components and programs that not only elevated the opportunity, but also provided that support that we think is missing in the marketplace. So we started with a thought leadership piece called the $1 trillion blind spot and the $1 trillion opportunity that investors are missing. And that uncovered basically $4.4 trillion of capital that is being left on the table when investors do not or overlook this underrepresented group. With that report, we subsequently launched 3 other reports. We had a podcast that talked about the topic. And we also launched the lab, which is formerly known as the Multicultural Innovation Lab, but currently the Inclusive Ventures Lab. And what that is it focuses on 4 components. Capital. So we invest $250,000 in exchange for 5% of equity into companies. Content. So this is curriculum sessions, working with each founder and their companies to do a deep dive on strategic improvements that they need to make, et cetera, all different types of content. Connections, which extending the Morgan Stanley kind of depth and breadth, focusing on different areas that founders may need support in through, our investment banking platform, our research platform. So really kind of providing connections, not just internally, but to external partners as well. And community, really kind of building this sense of community for the entrepreneurial ecosystem, which we think is also another kind of key component to our program and the success of it, because that building of the community then further tells the success story of other underrepresented founders that then go on to grow and build really great and significant businesses.
So you're basically building the 6 degrees of separation of Morgan Stanley Inclusive Ventures, basically, right? Like with all of the different elements that you're trying to bring together.
Exactly. And we're really intentional in our approach in that I think what makes us stand out the most is the fact that we're able to really connect not just different parts of Morgan Stanley, but really provide a custom and curated approach for each founder's experience. So whether it's connecting them to, an investment banker that may have taken one of their competitors public, or connecting them to research data that kind of helps propel them, or helping them with their hiring or marketing or whatever it may be. We've had portfolio companies come back. It's really a customized and curated approach to really helping companies accelerate.
And that, it really sounds with the way that you've set up the operations of it with content, community, capital, and connections. Obviously, the Inclusive Venture Lab has a very powerful mission. And obviously the operations have been set up to help you meet those goals. So how do you measure the impact of your initiatives when supporting underrepresented founders? Can you share any success stories that highlight those positive outcomes?
Absolutely. So the program launched in 2017, and since then, we've had about 92 companies that have gone through to graduate from the lab. And out of those 92 companies, they've all gone on to raise over $238 million of additional capital. I like to say that's one of our strongest KPIs because it really speaks to our ability to activate, I think, the fundraising ecosystem. It's already challenging for founders of color and for women to support and find that support in fundraising and additional capital raising. So we like to say that showing the success metrics of additional capital raise is really kind of key to showing our levels of success. We've had companies out of 92 companies, 20 women that have gone on to raise more than $1 million of capital or more, which that number is actually really small in total. So I think maybe only 2,000 or so women have gone on to raise $1 million in capital, which is a really, really small number. You would think that it wasn't that small, but it is. And I think that's something else that we can speak to is our support of markets or asset classes, we like to call them, that others tend to overlook. Another KPI, we've spent countless hours of content and curriculum work with companies. So over, just give an example of this last cohort, we had over 1,600 hours committed of working one-on-one with companies on whether it's their sales motion, marketing, hiring, B2B strategy. How are they thinking about fundraising? How are they thinking about increasing their sales pipeline? So really working one-on-one with companies while they're spending their time in the lab, I think is another significant KPI that we like to speak to.
So you mentioned quite a stark statistic right now, right? That only very few women have gone on to raise $1 million in capital. Can you tell us a little more of the actual sort of facts on the ground in terms of the challenges that you've observed underrepresented founders in the venture ecosystem face, and how does the Inclusive Ventures Lab address those challenges?
Absolutely. So one of the challenges, and just to throw one additional stat out there that I think, pretty much a lot of people know about, less than 2% of capital that is raised in venture goes to women. And unfortunately, out of the billions of dollars that the venture ecosystem brings in, less than 2% is significantly low, especially given how much of the market women make up. So one of the challenges that I think we see primarily is that investors tend to invest in things that they may know about or they may know through a network, which tends to be a little bit sometimes closed loop. What we are intentionally doing is opening up that closed loop network and inviting in and educating the market on how to engage with and support these founders. So for example, if we have a company that is working on women's health or a problem to solve women's health that, your traditional male founder may not know about or understand, it's our job within the lab to really kind of make that connection and potentially help make those connections to tell the story. How is this company supporting women's health? What's the true problem that they're solving? And a lot of times, founders create these amazing businesses and they really just need help telling the story, opening the doors to figure out, okay, who do I identify that want to invest in this story and help me to solve this problem? So even something as simple as telling their story, we help work with founders on how to tell the story so that it resonates well with an investor who may not necessarily know or understand the market opportunity for this space. So that's when our research can come in and we can say, hey, this is just to throw a number out there, $500 trillion opportunity that, from a market perspective, that this company is trying to tackle. So simple things like that, I think, is just kind of low hanging fruit for one of the ways in which we can kind of help open up this kind of closed loop network and really provide that connectivity for our founders, for the ecosystem, to then participate and then kind of have more of an engaging experience. Morgan Stanley has an extensively deep network, right? We're an investment bank. So opening that access to potential clients, and that's why I said leveraging the entire firm is really so important. Opening potential client opportunities, potential investor opportunities, or even just teaching founders how to put together a business model is just different ways in which we provide kind of this customized approach, as I mentioned.
So how does you mentioned that in terms of the support that you provide the companies within the lab, there's a lot of support that you're drawing on from Morgan Stanley and obviously the breadth and depth of the operations there. But does the Inclusive Venture Labs also collaborate with other organizations and ecosystem builders? And if so, how? How do you, in order to sort of create a more robust support system for entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. So that, I think, is just part two of that connectivity that we provide, because we can't just all do it in-house. We have to have external partners because the ecosystem does go far and wide. We partner with different organizations who have different subject matter expertise that will come in, offer their time to speak with and meet with our founders, provide office hours. So anything from legal to hiring to, again, sales strategy, fundraising, coach, right? Mental health coaches. We provide all of that for our companies because, again, it's about network. At the end of the day, it's about opening network and it's about access. Traditionally, these founders may not have had an opportunity to engage with some of these companies who are best in class in whatever subject matter expertise that they have. So providing that or giving them that visibility or that access, I will call it, to some of these other organizations is another kind of really critical piece of what we do. A lot of times we'll have companies come in, even just from a law firm perspective, right? Some of these companies can't necessarily afford, best in class legal advice and service. And we have lawyers that'll come in and provide some pro bono services, office hours that can literally help unlock specific maybe questions that can take companies from one decision to the next that can be really critical and pivotal to their business. So again, unlocking that network, I think, is the biggest kind of takeaway. I hate to keep saying the same thing, but it really is about opening up the network of knowledge. Those who know more can do more.
No, that's really powerful stuff. And it makes a lot of sense. I think it's one of the things that when we launched the Passport platform, that's something that we try to do as well, is take some of the resources and the supportive ecosystem that we had created, the environment for our founders in Boston and Silicon Valley who were coming into the innovation centers and sort of, make that more distributed more equitably by bringing it online so that any founder anywhere could take advantage of some of these resources and assets. So we completely are mission aligned in the way that you think about supporting founders as well. So LaToya, give us a sense of the experience of founders within the Inclusive Ventures Labs. I believe you just finished recruitment for your next cohort. But if somebody was interested, if there was an underrepresented founder who was interested in receiving support, what is the process? How do they apply? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So our process, it is a competitive process in that, once we've intentionally really put the word out. So it's competitive, but it's a really robust process. So our application period runs traditionally from February, and it goes through to kind of, I would say, are in and around closing in end of March. So by that time, and just to give you some sense of the numbers, last year We had over 7,000 applicants that kind of applied to be a part of the program. We kind of narrowed that funnel down to companies that we say traditionally have some revenue. So they found some product market fit. The reason we tend to work better with companies who have some revenue generation is because we focus so much on kind of strategic goals and growth and less of the on the product side of things. We really want to make sure the company has a stake in what they're doing and has received some traction so that we can really just help take them to the next level. So once we kind of go through the applications, we narrow down that kind of top of the funnel number to about 100 or so companies that will video screen as kind of their second round of interviews. Once we do video screen, we then take our companies through the investment committee process, which occurs in June. And then from there, we'll select our 25 companies globally. So in that process, we would say we have companies identified by the June, July timeframe to start the process in September. Once the companies start in September, we take them through, again, an intensive deep dive of where they are in the business at that point in time. And we really work with the company on identifying goals. So what do they want to take away from the 5 months that they're in the lab? What are some of the things that are keeping them up? What do they think, the next 12 months and 24 months and 5 years looks like? So we really take an intense approach to working with the founders over the 5-month period. And then after the 5-month period in February, it culminates with a demo day where we effectively introduce the companies to the investor community in a formal capacity. So our last demo day that we just had in February, globally, we had over 400 attendees, and more than half of those attendees were from the investor community. So it's a real opportunity for us to feature the founders, showcase the work that we've done with them, and then provide that, again, probably connective tissue to either get investing during that time or build the relationships that will help them get to the investing that they may need in future rounds. So that's pretty much the cycle of our program. And it runs once a year. And again, we take up to 25 companies each year.
Is there anything in particular that any founder who's applying to your program should think about before they decided to put their hat in their ring?
Absolutely. So be prepared, I would say, to really focus on growth and spend the most of the time that you have with us for 5 months. I know a lot of accelerators, some people may feel as if it's just kind of a check mark for them or a check the box. Our program is really like a mini MBA. I like to say we take our founders from founder to CEO because we really do. We're intentional in how we work with founding teams. We're intentional in our approach. We're intentional in the market opportunity that we see with them, the connections that we're building with them. So I would say think about where you are in your business and where you are in kind of your entrepreneurship journey, and if you're ready for that type of engagement, right? Because think of us as an extension of the team. Another CEO hat is put on, another COO hat is put on. So definitely think about where you are in your business and if you're really ready for that injection of growth. Just to give you an example, we've had companies that would apply and they're like, oh, we know you can connect us to a big potential client. Are you ready to take on that big potential client if we made that introduction? So really trying to understand where you are in your business cycle, if you're ready kind of for that acceleration of growth, the injection of capital, you have some revenue, but you really just kind of need that additional support. I will say, give us a try.
Really good advice in terms of, being prepared for growth. Don't just grow because you want to grow, but are you really prepared for growth and everything that it will bring with it? So very, very, very important words for founders everywhere. I want to switch gears a little bit now. I want you to sort of think about, other entrepreneurship support organizations and other ecosystem builders. how can they think about actively contributing to create a more inclusive environment for underrepresented founders? Are there any specific strategies or initiatives that you would recommend for them?
This is a great question. So I think, I can speak to what we found success in based on the thesis that we started this on. And the thesis was that there is capital being left on the table by overlooking this demographic. I would say if there are organizations and companies that really want to find the best ways to engage with underrepresented founders, figure out what is your biggest strength or what is it that you can bring to the table. Morgan Stanley we're conveners, we're advisors, we're strong in financials, obviously, in what we can do. We know what we know, and we're strong in strategic growth, we're strong in acquisitions, we bring companies public. We know what our strengths are. And that's what we lean into, right? We're not like a product development type of company. So we know that that's not where we're going to find our best and highest use in working with founders. So I would say and encourage anyone who wants to do similar work, really figure out and identify where your strengths are and how you can be supportive and unlock areas of whether it's access or areas of opportunities for underrepresented founders, because the need is there and it's not just within one capacity. Some founders may need product development support, right? Like if that's an area of expertise, if someone has an engineering background or understands technology really well, figure out how you can kind of lean in and identify, where some of those gaps are. And that's another thing too. I feel like because our approach is so tailored and customized to each founder, it's never a one size fits all approach. And I think you should go into it with that same lens because again, not all businesses are the same. So each problem is different. But if you take the approach of, okay, where can I lean in to companies that may have this specific need? And then you kind of go and find that, then you can find those synergies and find that connective tissue. So it's always really a two-way street, right? What is the need? And how can I fill and help support that need? I think that's really, really key and critical. What is the need? What is the goal? Is this the right time? And how can I fill in that gap?
Given your experience, what trends are you finding most exciting or promising in the venture capital landscape right now concerning inclusivity and supporting underrepresented founders?
It's a great question. We just closed our ninth application kind of period and process, and we've seen this year a lot of fintech, which is really interesting. So I think kind of that, future of wealth, future of access to capital is one area that, not to say it wasn't an area of focus before, but we did see this year a lot more fintech companies. Healthcare is always another big one, right? Because if anywhere that you see, there's still opportunity for us to make improvements on quality of life and solve problems, that's where we're really going to see the biggest drivers. So healthcare is definitely another area of focus that we've seen. Advancements in women's health and how we approach that market is definitely something that we've seen a big uptick in. And EdTech is another really big one that we've seen this year as well. So how are children accessing education? How are they learning? How are we teaching them? How are we engaging with schools? How are schools engaging with students? So seeing big improvements in those areas, which I think there's significant opportunity still to this day, and excited to see a lot of the new innovations that are coming out in those spaces, particularly. Last year was AI, right? Everything had AI in it, but I think that was the AI buzz because although this year, a lot of companies are using AI, it's less of the buzz and it's more, how is our technology leveraging AI to be efficient?
What advice would you give to aspiring underrepresented founders, given that they have a steeper uphill climb? How would you how should they think about navigating the entrepreneurial landscape, and how can they best position themselves for success?
Another great question. Listen, entrepreneurship is not easy. It's not easy for anyone. The only difference is that, some doors are unlocked for some and, not for others. I would say, though, for underrepresented founders or founders who are tending to find it just extremely challenging or more challenging than some of their counterparts, if you are committed to the problem that you're solving, stick to it, right? Like, you have to stick to itiveness is one of the things or the common themes that I think we see with founders who are more successful. They've heard no's a million times, but they continue to go at the same knock at the same door. And if it's not the same door, they're more strategic in the doors that they're knocking on. So I would say definitely stick to the problem that you're solving and the solution. If you think it's the right solution, it will definitely come to bear. And I would also say and suggest that do your research, right? So not every platform is the best platform, not every connection is the right connection, but make sure that you are opening up your own knowledge horizon and knowledge base to understanding the market that you're going into. Who are the players? What are who are some of your competitors connected to? Who are some of your peers connected to? Really, really become a sponge in the space, because the more you know, again, the more you can do. So go out there, put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to make those connections. There are different startup events, there are different panel discussions. It's really about activating that knowledge base. And that's when I find companies then to happen to meet someone who was able to connect them with this other person. It's really such a highly networked ecosystem that I think the more you put yourself out there, the more you are comfortable speaking about what you're doing, the problem you're solving, and making those connections, the better your success and your chances are. But founder fatigue is a real thing, right? So also prioritizing founder mental health, making sure that you are pulling on a community of support, because again, it's not easy. So being able to talk to other founders who have gone through the same thing or having the same challenges, and then can help provide or speak to building you up or helping you feel more positive when things may not be going so well. Last year was a really difficult fundraising environment. So having that community of other founders who are, going through the same situation has been really, or could be really, really helpful in, stopping a company from maybe closing down too early or selling too early. So really being comfortable with thinking about this as an ecosystem type of thing, right? We always say people who innovate, we build things not just for ourselves, it's for everyone. So having that mindset going into innovation means unlocking and opening yourself up to making those connections, building these communities, learning all that you can, and doing the best that you can.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. And I think just as we wrap up, I'd love to get your recommendation. What's your favorite book on innovation or entrepreneurship that you might have read?
I will say Carla Harris, who launched this team back in 2016, she's written 3 books, and her last book, Lead to Win, is definitely something that I would say is motivational, and definitely something that should be on everybody's to-read list, because it's extremely inspirational. And it's not just for professionals, meaning it's not just for people who are in the corporate C-suite, but it's for everyone who really want to pull on those guiding principles on how to make sure you are your best self and be the most successful that you can be in any platform.
Thank you so much, LaToya. It has been my absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you. Really enjoyed speaking to you, and all the best with the Morgan Stanley Inclusive Ventures Lab. You're doing incredibly impactful work, and we at OneValley are extremely proud to be partners with you, and hope to do so for a long time to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the time and the opportunity as well. It was great having this conversation.